Welcome back to Father and Son Investing. It is the day before the Senseonics quarterly results come out. That will come out tomorrow on August 9th. I'm going to talk today in this video about three things that I'm going to be looking for in those quarterly results in that report to help me know whether I think Senseonics is still staying on track. Now, I've done a number of Senseonics videos in the past. I will put a link to all of those videos right here now so that you can click on those if you want to get up to speed on Senseonics. Otherwise, let me just tell you the three things that I'm interested in to see whether I think Senseonics is staying on track. Number one, the number of patients that they have. Now, if we go back to the past videos, you'll see that I talked about roughly about 600 patients within the United States and about 2,500 patients within the European Union. So that's not a whole lot of patients, obviously, 3,100 patients. We compare that to a company like Dexcom, where they're looking at about 900,000 patients. So Senseonics has a ways to go here. But that means that small incremental increases can cause significant changes, percentage changes, in how they are doing. So I would be looking to see something in the range of 1,000 U.S. patients. That would mean that they would have added about 400. Now, is that a doable thing? I think it is with their new device that was just marketed back in April and has now had one quarter. I think 1,000 would be like a top number for me. If they've made it to even 800 U.S. patients, obviously that would be a significant increase. That's about a 33% increase if they've added 200 patients during the quarter. But I would love to see 1,000. In Europe, I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult to know, but certainly if they could have tacked on another 300 or 400 or 500 patients, again, pretty significant percentage changes. So that's the first thing I'm going to be looking for, is how many patients now are using the SENS device. Number two, I want to know about the number of providers who have been trained now to install this device. If we go back to last December, it was about 400 providers, and if we go back to the last quarterly report, it was about 550 providers. So now I want to get an update for that. Now remember that the American Diabetes Association had their big meeting in New Orleans back in June. Now, Senseonics was at that meeting, and there are about 15,000 healthcare professionals that are going to be that attended that meeting. So I would expect that if Senseonics was doing their job, that they would have gotten a significant number of providers interested in learning how to install this device. Now, will those providers have been trained yet? Obviously, getting them trained before the end of the quarter, which ended back on June 30th, would have been difficult with the meeting occurring in early June. But I'm hopeful that they will be able to provide an update about the number of providers who were interested in learning from that ADA meeting, and hopefully be able to see an increase in the number of providers who have been trained. So what would I be looking for? Well, between quarters, we were looking at about 150 providers from the last report. So I would be looking to see more like 200, 250 providers who have been trained. If you're looking at that, you're looking at, 40% increase potentially in the number of providers total. So we add the 200 to 250 to 550, and we're looking up there close to 800 providers. That's what I would like to see. But even if they've only gotten 150 again, at least they are still on pace. What I don't want to see is that the amount of growth has regressed, that they've gotten less than that extra 150 providers trained during the quarter. Now, what is the third thing that I'm looking for? Well, if we go back to their last quarterly report, the CEO, Tim Goodnow, said that once they got through the ADA meeting, they wanted to be able to submit what's called an IDE to the FDA. Now, what is an IDE? IDE stands for Investigational Device Exemption. Anytime that a medical device is going to be used on a human, it has to be, at least in the United States, it has to be approved by the FDA. So how do you do that when you have a device that's investigational and obviously hasn't been approved? It requires an exemption from the FDA. And so Senseonics, their intent was to submit this investigational device exemption to the FDA after the ADA meeting. Now don't get worried if you're a Senseonics investor. The IDE approval process is much more simple than it is to get the final approval for a medical device. So in this case, if we look at the FDA's website, we'll see that we're looking at about 30 days. And what happens is it's kind of by default. If the FDA doesn't notify the company who is submitting for the exemption that their exemption is disapproved, then it is by default approved. Otherwise, they may have to do approved with conditions or disapproved. What I will be looking for then is to see whether the IDE, the investigational device exemption, has already come through so that they can start their pivotal trial for their 360-day device. Now, what am I not worried or looking for necessarily in this quarterly report that comes out tomorrow? I am less concerned about their revenue and their earnings per share. While certainly those are always important parts of a quarterly report, we need to remember that Senseonics is a tiny company. Compare that to the behemoth Dexcom, and Senseonics revenue is just a drop in the bucket. And we need to understand that with penny stocks, their revenue can be quite variable from quarter to quarter. That's just part of the game with companies that are this small. So even if they don't have a stellar quarter in revenue, I am still hanging in there. I really think that this particular device stands a very good chance of helping a lot of people in the world, and as it helps a lot of people, it will also make a lot of money for the company and in turn make a lot of money for its investors. So I'm in this one for the long haul. I certainly have not bet all of my money on this, but I'm excited about Senseonics and where they can go. I'm looking forward to the quarterly report coming out tomorrow, August 9th. After that quarterly report comes out, I'll come out with an update video. We'll see whether these 3 questions or 3 things that I'm looking for get answered in the quarterly report and what those answers are. Please share this information with a young person in your life. Make investing a family affair. It can be quite fun for young people, and actually they can be quite good at it as well. And until tomorrow, enjoy your investing.